Internet, hello you absolute lovelies. Let's talk all about that The Boys season and series finale. The Boys has ended after 7 years, after one spinoff with more to come, and after so much trauma in a way that is shockingly the most like the comics of any episode of The Boys, I think, to date. I don't think I've ever seen an episode of TV that has used themes and elements and certain parts of a comic book and then change course and surprise comic fans by being more like the comic, quite like this. So there's going to be full spoilers for The Boys, full spoilers for the comic book, full spoilers for anything Boys related. So please have seen the episode. We're diving in 3, 2, 1. What a perfect ending to me for a show that is all about trauma, that is all about satire, that is all about the interesting level of how far you're willing to go. This show has addressed so much so often, and I did not know how it would tie up so many different threads. I've loved this season personally. I think that it's had a lot of interesting feedback. A lot of people have felt that there was filler, which I genuinely and I honestly don't understand. I've felt every episode had incredible character arcs and filled characters out so that when we got to this point, we were more invested. But that, I think, is the perk of TV versus movies. There was actually going to be a The Boys movie, and it turned into this TV show, and I'm so glad it did because of those episodes that got to fill these characters out. So anyway, this season, I think, was as good as the first season, and this ending is the closest to the comic I think we could possibly get. I am shocked that it adhered now, but I'm even more shocked that the rest of the show feels tonally appropriate to lead to the comic book ending. In the comic book, not only, and spoilers to the come, not only does Homelander get killed with a crowbar down the center of his head, slight variation here with the stab through and pull, but not only does Homelander get killed by Butcher, there's a gap thereafter. Like, Homelander dies decently far away from the ending of the run, and I always knew, like, Anthony Starr is such a major part of the show. He's so formative to the show. I felt like the show was going to end when Homelander did, and I was like, maybe they'll invert things and Homelander survives, but I had a feeling it had to end with Homelander ending. I'm shocked they gave us both endings, because the actual ending of The Boys is Hughie taking out Butcher, and both endings felt very cathartic. Both arcs felt like they were very fulfilled, but because of so much this season gave us so many characters that we were invested in that I genuinely cared about slight augmentations and variations. Not only did it thematically give us very interesting commentary on the two major settings being the two major themes of the show, being the White House. This show has been very aggressively satirical and a commentary on politics, especially US politics in 2026. It also, its other main setting for the big fight was Vaught Industries. The show is a huge satire on comic books and capitalism and all the things that its, at times, parent company releases. So to use Vaught, which is effectively Amazon, and to use the White House as these two endings, I think, was a beautiful way to cap the whole season off and really address all the satire it's had, but it also gives us the most comic book ending to date. Now, I really love the death of Homelander giving us some generational stuff with Ryan. I really like that we already addressed the Soldier Boy thing not being how he was going to get his closures. Then he seeks it out in Ryan. He goes to his son, and he has that same, nope, you are a lonely, sad little man, but he needs to have this closure he's never going to get. And then Ryan, in turn, has that with Butcher, where Butcher isn't a good man. Ryan doesn't forgive Butcher, and he does have to kill Homelander, his father, but that doesn't make Butcher a good man. And then that last thing that's going to set him off, after accepting that he was going to be alone, it was going to be Terror who was with him. He was still going to have someone to go sit in a cabin with alone. Once Terror passes, that's the final straw on the camel's back, and then it turns into where the comic needs to go. Now, in the comic book, there's a lot more time. There's a decent amount of issues until he bites it, but it's a similar arc of, we're not done yet. Like, the soups are still a problem. This is still going to just be replaced. Another Homelander will take his place, and I love that they basically set that up with, you know, the Gus Fring on TV saying, I'm taking over as CEO of Vaught. Like, all of the things are falling into place just like Butcher said it was going to, and it was happening, but obviously a genocide is not the answer. So Hughie gets to have the most Hughie of arcs and still be the good person having survived all this. He wants to be the angel on Butcher's shoulder, and they let it breathe in a way in the show that I thought really served that, because Hughie, this episode, is the most like he's been to the comic ever, but it's also the most like he's felt since season 1. Season 1 felt more like the comic, and this felt a lot like the comic, but both felt like the greatest hits of the comic. I'm one of the people that read the book and enjoyed it, but I think everyone has a preference for the show. I think the show has improved upon a lot of the comic and made it more streamlined, made it more approachable, made it more digestible. But these two episodes, the season 1 and then this final episode, really were kind of the greatest hits of The Boys. I really feel like the payoff with the voice of God getting gagged to death is very The Boys. I feel like the way the presidency and the toss out happens, and that whole pivot with everything, with Hughie getting the job offer, which plays into some of the Boys stuff where they're actually working for the government to take out Soups, but they're all Gen V'd up. That's very different. But all the closures felt really good. I love that Frenchie and Moncoeur and the heart elements got to be a way to elevate Soldier Boy's powers. I love that Soldier Boy, I never really was that invested in his powers, but when Kimiko has them, you're invested in her heart being what they always referred to each other. Like, that was what Frenchie referred to as. So that power now is way more elevated and way more interesting. I love that moment. Mother's Milk, getting his family back, but also giving Ryan a family, is such a beautiful arc for his character. Terror dying oddly gave him the weight he has in the comics, if even for the end of the show, because Terror is in the whole ass comic. Terror is on tons of covers. Terror is important to the comic books, but he didn't really get his time to shine in the show. He had an episode this season. He's had some other episodes, but he's not one of the boys like he is in the book. But here, he's the reason for Butcher going over the edge, Butcher dying. Like, that was the last straw, so it gave him a lot of weight, and it was very sad. I think the fight choreography in this episode was some of the best it's ever been. The fight in the White House was incredibly brutal. The three-way fight and the reason for the dramatic why is she pausing, I thought worked. You know, in like Jackie Chan movies where everybody's fighting them one at a time, they actually gave that some reason, her recovery. It was edited sometimes in a way that I wish we'd seen Frenchie a little earlier, so we weren't like, Kimiko, what are you doing? But I think the narrative, actually served it so well by the time we got to that point. I thought it was as brutal as it needed to be. I thought the delivery Anthony Starr's had as Homelander has been so transcendent. I think he deserves the Emmy. He has for a long time, but especially this season. And I love all of the stages of not grief, but like a cornered animal trying to like defend himself and gnaw off his own leg and play anything he can all on camera. Because the last thing he'd ever want is to be humiliated on a global scale. So he got killed, he got humiliated, he got seen as a weak little man that he is. He got proven to not be a god. All the things that he would hate most on camera totally served his ending, but the acting was also so incredible. It really, really worked for me. And Butcher, that last diabolical smile into camera, all of that felt like those characters getting those important moments that we've been waiting for since season 1. This was a 7-year payoff. This was 5 seasons of television with a spinoff in Gen V in the middle to get to this moment. That scorched earth we were promised, we actually got, and I loved it. I was really impressed with that fight. I thought it felt like a good payoff. I loved Hughie in this episode. I love that he gets blood splattered one last time and says he needs a job. There's a lot of meta layers to his self-awareness of what his character has to be. Really enjoyed that. I do think there were some seeds planted in his character I would have liked to see pay off differently. Like, I thought he planted the virus, but I realized he didn't. But his familiarity with that, it did feel like I wish I'd gotten more time with this Hughie earlier in the season. There was a lot of times where Hughie felt like he was kind of furthering the plot but not getting to be that voice of reason, that voice of hope, and that would have been nice just a little bit more times earlier. But it did pay off in a big way, having him so hopeful and ending with him having a baby, having Starlight in her Starlight clothes, and having all of this turn into the very end of the show, mirroring the beginning of the show, on the same sidewalk where he lost Robin, on the same moment where a Soup took his future away, a Soup's giving him a future with a baby in the belly. And that whole closure was really beautiful. I love that for Hughie. And then the last fight between Hughie and Butcher I thought was very fitting, because we got the closure of Lenny, we got the closure of that brotherhood between the two of them, but that's also kind of a father-son element. Like, we didn't just have Ryan as kind of a son figure, but there was a bit of that with Hughie. It was more of a little brother, but you felt that just familial relation, and he had to be the one to do it. And I love that he gave him an out. He said, I was never going to stop. He's giving him the forgiveness that Hughie would need, but also the permission to do this. I thought that whole fight was brutal, and it was really beautiful because you felt both of them. The pain was all there. And at the end of the day, he was trying to kill millions of people, many of them innocent. So he had to be stopped. But we love Butcher so much. You did feel that. But he's also not a good person, which you also felt. So I was so impressed with this finale. I think it buttoned up everything it needed to do. I think it followed the comic in a way that enhances the comic and enhances the show. I think it surprised comic fans because the show hasn't followed it to this point and then really does at the end. I was impressed at the runtime, an hour and 2 minutes, getting all this. I would have preferred maybe 2 episodes, one where you think the show's over and it goes into kind of a Marvel denouement. You know, Marvel's structure, their shows are usually the penultimate episode is all the action, and then the last episode gives you a little bit of closure, some time to see where the character is going off to. I thought they might do, if the show had a little bit more time, Homelander's death, you think it's over, but then you realize because of the catalyst of Butcher that it isn't going to be all happy-go-lucky. And then we have a little bit more time to feel that transition and see the Ryan moment turn into the Terror moment, turn into those things. So that little moment I would have extended or just made one longer episode, like an hour and a half. But that's really my only major note with this finale. And my only major note for the season overall is I would have liked a little bit more of hopeful Hughie. I would have liked a little bit more of maybe like a longing in Mother's Milk, and I get why he wasn't, but a little bit just to tie in the end. But otherwise, man, I really love this season. I think it's right up there with season 1 as incredible. I would love to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below. What did you think of The Boys series finale today? I cannot believe The Boys is over. We do have some spinoffs. We get some stuff with Soldier Boy. We get the one starring Gabriel Luna. We got lots more Boys-esque stuff to come, but the big show, the one that started it all, Vaught Industries continues, but The Boys is over. Would love to know what you thought of the ending. Let me know in the comments below. And I think MVP acting-wise in this episode was Hughie reading Frenchie's will. If I was still an actor, I'd be doing that scene in class as my monologue. That was beautiful. Such eloquent use of assholes and somehow heartfelt while being so depraved. And that's Frenchie, and that's The Boys. So I felt it. It was glorious. Well delivered by Jack Wade. All right, much love, y'all. Let me know in the comments what you thought, and please like, subscribe if you're new to this page and you made it to the end of this video. I cover comics, I cover movies, I cover TV. I read 50 to 70 comics a week, and I break all the news down from the comic book lens, as well as reviewing everything in pop culture. So please hit that subscription bell, and please leave a comment so this grows. I appreciate y'all. Bye.